2, 1, and we're live with Andy Patton. Welcome to Cory's Conversation Podcast. Thanks for joining me, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so to tell people a little bit about you, so you are a sports writer based out of the Pacific Northwest. We went to Gonzaga together and had some good times in the kennel rooting on the Zags. And, I was reading one of our mutual friends, Dave Soto's tweet the other day.
Yeah.
And that one struck me because if there's no NBA season, if there's no football, if there's no baseball, I'll be sad, but I'll survive. But if this damn coronavirus wipes out the 2020, 2021 NCAA basketball season for the Gonzaga Bulldogs, I'm going to cry.
Yeah, it's like everybody seems to be going this year's bad for everybody except the Gonzaga basketball team. Everything's gone well for them. They had a really good year last year. Their recruiting this year has been incredible. Jalen Suggs committed. It's going to suck if there's no fans, but it's going to suck a lot worse if there's not a season. So whatever we need to do to get them on the court for as many games as possible, and especially a March Madness, even if it's May Madness, that's fine with me.
Yeah.
I just want to see this team in an NCAA tournament because they're going to be really, really good.
Mag fans, if you're listening, do whatever wear your mask, find a vaccine, donate to causes, whatever we got to do to make this season happen. My wife and I, Kiara, we've got tickets to the Orlando Invitational.
Oh, nice.
Purchased. Well, we didn't buy the tickets yet. We bought tickets because the plane tickets were super cheap, but we've actually bought those before the coronavirus stuff all popped up. Yeah. Now we're just sitting around like, please, yeah. We want to go to this game.
Yeah. No, I know it's going to be a heck of a season. They just scheduled USC in Portland, which is a game I really hope to go to. USC is going to have a sneaky good basketball team next year, I think. But it's obviously every non-conference game. Their schedule's fantastic. Their team's fantastic. We just got to hope they actually play basketball.
Yeah, this year seems like kind of the culmination of a decade plus of great recruiting. With you look at like the best class they've had with the tricky trio of Suggs, Strother, and Harris. Plus you've got grad transfers coming in. So that's been a big thing for them. And their scheduling has always been, they've been just working, getting people to come to Spokane to play. And they'll play anyone, anywhere, at any time. So it just feels like this season's going to be the culmination of, okay, you've got the roster. Like I was looking at their roster today and it's just an embarrassment of riches. Like you're looking, I saw one prediction. It's like, okay, West Coast Conference finishing. This is how the order's going to finish. So it's like Gonzaga, BYU, Gonzaga's second team, San Francisco, third team, St. Mary's.
Yeah, for real. No, I think the culmination is a direct result of going to the national championship, because having worked in college athletics too, things seem to kind of happen 3 years in advance a lot of the time. Obviously recruiting is more like 1 to 2 years, not quite 3, and then scheduling really is like 2 or 3 years in advance for a lot of these. I know that they got some of these games kind of last minute, which is good. Yeah. And the season's kind of all up in the air, but I really think that we're starting to really, really see the results of making that NCAA a championship game, even though they didn't win. Obviously, that was kind of a big step in the national stage of actually being not just like that plucky team that does really well in the regular season and sometimes does okay in the tournament to like a legitimate contender. And that's where, Zach Collins was a one and done. I think that was huge in the sense that it started to allow some of those guys to think, hey, maybe I could only go there for a year. Like maybe they don't have like a unwritten rule against it. And I know that there are some fans who are split on that, but I don't think there's a lot of fans who are upset about Jalen Suggs coming to campus, even if he's only going to be there for a year.
You can't be upset about those guys coming in. I mean, I see fans get upset that, people are thinking about leaving early, like your Cory Kisperts or whoever, but you got to appreciate, look, they worked really hard. This may be their best chance. And Zach Collins, it was that case. Like there was no better time. He couldn't have got his draft stock any higher than, what did he go at, 7 or 8?
9, 10, something like that.
But he's not getting any higher. And you ride. So I was talking to a buddy about the pandemic and everything. And how does this affect draft stock of players like Killian Tilly, where you see, with Zach Collins, you saw his draft stock just shoot up after having a great run in the tournament, even as not a starter. That's a sixth man coming off the bench playing behind, Shemek and J3.
Yeah.
But how does that affect like Killian Tilly's draft stock not being able to showcase now that he was finally healthy for the last part of the season? Where do you think he falls?
Yeah, the health thing it just sucks for Chile that he got healthy right when like the entire world got not healthy.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, yeah, he's a guy who he did enough in his college career that I think teams they know what he's capable of. Like he wasn't so injured that he's just like a mystery, but
Right.
there's still the element of whether teams believe he's healthy or not at this point, which they don't know, which is going to impact his draft stock, like you said. But there's still the risk of like, even if he's healthy now, he's had so many injuries. Are we willing to gamble on that? And I think that from a talent perspective, his game fits the NBA so well, so much better than like a Petrusev, who's very talented and doesn't have an injury history, but would have been good in the NBA 23 years ago, but not as much now. Tilly fits this game. He's 6'10. He can jump out of a gym. He's a great outside shooter, but he's 23, I'm guessing. He's had a lot of injury history. I think he should go in like the pick 50 to 60 range, like right at the end. He's a guy that I think really fits like what the San Antonio Spurs like to look for, or what the Los Angeles Lakers might want, just somebody that LeBron can pass the ball to out of a drive. And so those two teams have late picks. I'd love to see them try to get a guy like that. Even the Blazers, that's my hometown team. Like they are hurting for big men. They've had a lot of injuries there. So I don't think he goes any earlier than that just because of his age. I mean, you looked at where Nigel Williams got. I think he got picked like 55th, and he was coming off a better season, but he was effectively not picked because they thought he was too old, which is a bummer because I think talent-wise he has every ability to make it. It's just a matter of getting that right opportunity. He could find the right team. I think he'll be okay. He'd rather go 56th if it's a team that's actually going to potentially utilize him than 32nd to a team who's just going to give up on him if he doesn't pan out. So,
yeah, I wouldn't be upset about seeing LeBron and Tilly playing together. And those Lakers, yeah, they have something for Zags. I mean, they kind of have the pipeline with Norvell all the way going back to Turioff.
Yeah, they've loved him.
Yeah. So, well, cool, man. Well, so what's it like? So you write for a couple different sources, right? So USA Today with the Seahawks. You cover some Mariners stuff. You cover a lot of just MLB across the board. I know you're a Mariners guy, but you're a Detroit guy, really, right?
Yeah. I'm a baseball fan in general, first and foremost. I think the team I root for the most has always just been my fantasy baseball team. But I grew up a Tigers fan because my dad's from Detroit and I grew up in Oregon, and so we didn't have a team, but the only games I could really watch on TV were Mariners games. So I also grew up with the love of the Mariners and the Tigers. They were both pretty bad when I was younger, and they're both bad now. So It's been a bit challenging. The Tigers were good for a few years, like 7 or 8 years ago. They were decent, but yeah, it's been fun to get to cover them. I write for a site called Pitcher List, and they do mostly fantasy baseball stuff, but they've kind of delved into just doing more general baseball coverage, kind of analytics-y stuff. I manage the dynasty team, so I talk mostly about minor leaguers, which is a bummer this year because it doesn't look like there's going to be any minor leagues, although we do have like those kind of extended rosters, which just came out today, and so going to be talking a lot about that and kind of what that might mean for some of these guys' development.
Yeah, no minor league is such a bummer. I mean, I'm rocking my Rainiers hat. That was my favorite. I enjoy going to Mariners games, don't get me wrong, but I think I almost enjoy going down to Tacoma more because it's a more intimate setting. If you've ever been to like a AAA, like you see the talent level because those guys are playing up and down all the time. But you're in a 4,000 seat field. And so you're just so much more personal. Like I remember being down there and we're sitting behind home plate and Zunino was down there for like a rehab stint when he was with the Mariners, and he's coming in and out of the dugout. And the way the Cheney Stadium works in Tacoma is if you're in the Summit Club, you can like go underneath the stadium and they give you some food and stuff, and you actually walk through the dugout tunnel. So I like passed him by somehow. I think he got injured, and his girlfriend was like sitting like 6 rows up or something. And so I came by, I'm like, "You all right? You all right, Zunino?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm good." Gave me a fist bump. I'm like, "Oh, dude, this is so cool." It's just, you don't get that experience when you're, at the, major league club up at, it's still hard calling it T-Mobile, Safeco, whatever.
Safeco Field. No, agreed. Yeah, the minor league baseball has always been my favorite. There's a stadium in Salem, Oregon, which is about 45 minutes from where I grew up or so. The Salem Kaiser Volcanoes, and they're a affiliate for the San Francisco Giants, but they're like low A, so like usually like the guys who just got drafted play there. But the stadium's been there forever, and like my dad went to games there when he was my age or younger than I am now, like in his early 20s. And he talked about seeing Will Clark there before Will Clark was famous. And I was like, my dad and I have gone to Mariners games together, but he didn't experience this stadium, because it didn't exist. So I'm like, there's not a lot of stadiums, even major league stadiums, that have enough history. Obviously there's some, but in this area, there's not a lot. And so I'm like, this is the one stadium I can go to with my dad that you went to when you were younger, and the beers aren't, the price hasn't changed as much as they have at like Safeco or T-Mobile. So I'm bummed that minor league baseball won't happen this year. I'm bummed that they're talking about cutting some teams, because one of the teams they're talking about cutting is that Salem Kaiser team in that stadium that's been there for 40 years or so. So it's a bummer. Baseball's having a lot of issues up at the top, clearly, with their labor negotiations and their mistreatment of minor league players and just kind of the minor leagues in general. But it's clearly a part of baseball and a part of America that I hope we don't lose too much of.
Yeah. So you may know this more than me. I don't know enough of how the minor league system works, especially just how those guys get paid, because I know it's not a lot. They're not getting paid. You think you go down to a Tacoma Rainiers game or a Double A league, you think those guys are making money. Most of those guys, from my understanding, have jobs, right? And they're working and then they come and play baseball during the season. But so with the cancellation of minor league teams, are they getting paid right now, or are they just?
Some teams are. The most teams have announced that they're planning to continue to pay their minor leaguers. A couple teams said that they weren't, and I know the Oakland A's were one team that said that they're going to stop paying their minor leaguers, and they faced so much backlash that they changed their mind and said, okay, we will, because these guys get paid. I think they get paid like 400, 800 a month, 400 every 2 weeks, something like that, like an obscenely small amount. And it's for just the season. So it'd only be for like 3 months. Right. So they did the math and they're like, all right, this is saving you like $1.5 million. And that's like not even what you pay for a crappy middle reliever. Like this is virtually like the owner of the A's is one of the like not richest owners, and he's worth $2 billion. And it's like, you can spare $1.3 million to pay these guys pennies. So I think we're up to the point where most teams are paying them, or they've announced that they're at least paying them like through July or through August. I think the Mariners have said they're paying through September. They're one of the teams that has done that. It was interesting because the draft just happened and they shortened the draft too. Another thing that was somewhat controversial. It's normally 40 rounds and they cut it all the way down to 5, which was pretty shocking. And then anybody who didn't get drafted could sign, but they had a maximum of a $20,000 signing bonus, which is pretty small. But what happened is, since every team had to offer the same amount of money, the teams that had previously announced, hey, we're going to keep paying our minor leaguers, all of a sudden signed all the best players who are still remaining, because you're like, well, I don't want to – if I have to sign with the Royals and the A's and they're both offering me the same amount of money, and that team's not paying their minor leaguers this year and that team is, I'm going to go with the team that seems like they care more about their players. Yeah. So it backfired on some of the teams that kind of tried to pinch pennies in a rather unorthodox way, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of paying players, I know they just kind of released some stuff with the NCAA that they're working towards being able for players and students to be compensated for even just their likeness or for jersey deals and stuff like that. I think we fall on the same side of the agreement where we want it just doesn't make any sense that those guys and girls can't make any money for how much. I mean, you and I see firsthand how much money college football and college basketball and almost every major NCAA sport makes. What are your thoughts on players getting paid, and how do you still? I see the dilemma though. Mm-hmm. How do you see this playing out in a way that they can get paid, but you still don't lose the college? Because I'm a big NCAA basketball fan and watch the NBA, but it's not something I'm super passionate about, right? So how do you still keep that college, feel, but still make sure these guys are not getting screwed over by universities?
Sure. Yeah. No. It's a tricky situation. I think it's more complicated than a lot of people would maybe understand it, or kind of the nuance of it. But yes, they absolutely should get paid at the very least for their likeness and image and all of that stuff. That seems like a no-brainer. I have a Gonzaga number 5 jersey in my closet that I think was actually technically an Austin Daye jersey, because somebody gave it to me a long time ago, but I've always called it a Gary Bell jersey. Either way, one of those two guys should have gotten money, because Gonzaga wasn't selling a number 5 jersey just because it was the number they picked. They picked it because there was a player on the team. Half the people who went to Gonzaga have a 13 jersey because of Kelly Olynyk. he should have gotten money because of that, or a 4 for Kevin Pangos. You know?
Kevin Pangos jerseys. I've got a Sam Dower jersey.
Yes, I love it.
Shout out to Sam Dower, wherever you are, man.
Shout out to
I owe
Sam.
you about $20 or something at least.
Yeah, and that's to me, and like when they're on the covers of magazines, when they're in promos for the NCAA, you know, when Trae Young or Zion Williamson or those guys are getting the just unearthly amount of attention that they're getting from ESPN, it's wrong that they're not getting paid. I don't know how you can really argue against that, but there are a lot of complications in paying them just in paying them in general. Like there's 351 Division I schools. They don't all have football. They all have varying levels of football. Obviously, there's men's basketball, there's women's basketball, but there's not women's football. So from a Title IX perspective, it gets very complicated. If you're going to pay 130 football players, you need to figure out a way to redistribute that somewhere else. Mm-hmm. Some schools have way more money than others. So if Alabama's going to pay their kids, $35,000 a year, and Cal Poly is going to pay them $9,000, then your recruiting is just going to get even more spread out. It's very complicated. And I don't have an answer. If I did, somebody would be paying me a lot of money to implement it somewhere. But I think that, at the very least, the likeness, like if we use your picture, if we use your jersey number, if we use this, you should get paid for it. And it's still going to be tricky of the smaller schools aren't going to be selling as much merchandise kind of thing. But at the end of the day, the better players are still going to the schools that sell more merchandise anyway. So I don't think it swings the pendulum too far. It's really just going to be a matter of figuring out how to do this within Title IX regulations, where your women's athletes are still getting paid in some capacity, and how far down the sports it goes. Like, you can pay your basketball players, you can pay your football players, but your baseball players probably aren't making, your rowers aren't making you any money. Your baseball players probably aren't making you any money. So does it only those two sports? Because at the end of the day, if they just paid college football and college basketball, and they'd have to separate them somehow. And I kind of think that's what they might ultimately end up doing. It may not happen anytime soon, but if college football and college basketball are just separate entities, whether they remove themselves from the NCAA's rules or not, I don't know how that works. But if they're just separate and they say you get paid, women's basketball gets paid too, and that's just what we do, that might work. There's a lot of logistics to nail that down, but I think that that's probably the way that makes the most sense in however they figure it out.
Well, yeah, at least they made the first omission that, they should be getting paid. Because that was just the sticking point forever. It's like, no, they're amateurs. They should be paid. But then you see, like guys on covers of Sports Illustrated, you're selling that magazine subscription and you are making money from, and nobody's picking up that magazine because, I'm a big SI fan. Yeah, no, you're picking up because Zion Williamson is dunking somebody, or Andy Patton is on the cover in the kennel.
Hell yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Where's your check, man? You were on the cover of SI.
Yeah, could have gotten a little bit, right? Maybe I'll call Kelly, see if he got any residuals somehow.
Oh, geez. I think he's doing okay right now, so he's probably doing all right on.
He got a $50 million deal. He's got a little bit to spare, I think.
Yeah, he's doing all right, man. So we can talk sports all day. So what have the last 3 months been like for you covering sports? I mean, I know you still cover a lot of like off-season stuff and trades and transactions and draft stuff, but what's it like not having live sports to cover as a sports writer who, I mean, I imagine most of your stuff is kind of a la carte. You do the Zag podcast, which you just launched. So if you're a Zags fan, or if you're just a college basketball fan, you should definitely tune into that. We'll link in the description to that, so check it out. I've been listening to some of your stuff there, but what's it like covering sports with no live sports? I guess now we have a somewhat of an ending in the site, but
it's been interesting. It kind of forced me to become creative at the beginning of this. It was a lot of just coverage about what was happening. There was a lot of news of like, when is the season going to start, and like kind of just chaos surrounding it. So the first few weeks were really busy. And then it was like, okay, now we're starting to get into the like lull period. And that's where it was kind of like getting creative of like trying to find like the 10 worst signings in Seattle Seahawks history, and like just kind of like making stuff up like that. And then obviously, there was the big political movement with Black Lives Matter and everything that happened there. And so we started covering that a little bit, which athletes are very a part of that. So that was convenient in the sense of being able to write about it. And then the NFL kind of plugged on. Like their schedule hasn't changed all that much. So my primary gig is covering the Seahawks for USA Today, and the draft still happened, the free agency period still happened. They're still sort of on track to do training camp. I'd be pretty surprised if it starts on time, but that's the plan right now. So that hasn't been too different. Baseball stuff has been hard. It's just been really hard because the only thing to really talk about with baseball has been these labor negotiations. And there's only so many times you can say, hey, they're fighting.
Yeah.
Like there are some details, but it's effectively they're saying this, they're saying this. They're not agreeing with each other. It's just not very entertaining to continue to talk about that. So it was a little bit, obviously it's been challenging certainly. And the sites that I write for have not been performing as well. So there have been pay cuts and there's been like concern about whether we're going to keep our jobs. So that hasn't been great. And that's been all across the board for everybody,
Sure.
in every discipline, obviously not just sports clearly, but yeah, it's been forcing me to get a little bit more creative with some of the stuff that I do, which hasn't been the worst thing in the world, but I'm ready to get back to more of the traditional sports coverage.
Yeah, the more people I've been talking to, I mean, they've had kind of a similar, I mean, everybody's obviously facing some sort of either job affectedness or job loss. And so everybody's been having to say like, hey, yeah, I'm having to get creative with how I spend my time. And
Yeah.
I've got, this as an example, starting a podcast and doing house projects and other stuff, which hopefully ends up being a good thing and we can get back to normal, but people can take that creativity stuff that they had and then apply it to their job or their new job or whatever comes down the pipe. But I mean, if there's any light coming through a pretty dark time in history, that hopefully this is it, and we can get people doing stuff that they enjoy doing
I hope so.
in different ways. So, well, cool, man. Well, hopefully we can get this this college basketball season going. That's going to be such a bummer if we can't make it. Orlando Invitational on my list. We were supposed to go down for the NCAA tournament in Vegas.
Yeah.
When this came down, I think it was the 15th that Washington State ended up shutting down, March 15th, and we were supposed to fly out on like the 22nd or something to go there, and then we're like, yeah, that's probably not going to happen, and then Vegas was shut down. But
yeah, it's been rough. It's we're I think we're going to have a college basketball season. Like I feel pretty confident that games are going to be played. I would be stunned if there are fans, for starters. It just doesn't seem feasible.
I saw a baseball. So baseball is planning to pump volume in, right? Pump fan volume, and they're going to have stuff, which for baseball makes sense to me. For college basketball, for sure. For the NFL, if they don't have fans there, they're going to have to do it because I've heard players mic'd up and you can't broadcast NFL games. I mean, I coach high school football, and you can't broadcast high school football games if there's not a crowd there.
Yeah.
So what else? Do you know anything else that they're going to try and do to make games more realistic or feel more like there's fans there?
Kind of, yeah. So baseball, they're going to follow a lot of the model of what the Korean baseball organization has done. They shut down around the same time, and they came back like a month and a half ago, in part because they did a better job of social distancing in their country. It's way smaller, so that helped.
Yeah.
And so they've been going for about a month and a half, and they've had players get sick, and they've had to quarantine and do all like stuff that's unavoidable at this point. But they had fake crowd noise. They had like fake statue type things, or like cut things that look like people in the stands. I guess they did that a lot. And they had like a lot of rules about like what the players can and can't do. And some of them are just hilariously unenforceable, like trying to limit high fives and trying to limit spitting on the field and stuff that's like, I get why they're trying to say it because they're trying to protect the players, but it's not like an umpire is going to like, what is he going to tell you? You're out because you spit? Like, it's not going to happen. So it'll be interesting to see how some of that works. The NBA is coming back and their rules are hilarious too, because NBA, more than either of the other sports, the NBA is in a contained building, and it's just like a hot, and college basketball too. It's warm, and it's just kind of a cesspool. Like it's really easy for germs to live in a building that's contained, and these guys are going to be sweating all over the place and like constantly touching each other because that's just how basketball goes. So it's going to be hard. It's going to be a difficult sport to play. In baseball, at least there's like air, and in football there's air, and they have helmets on and they have mouth guards in. It might be better.
Yeah.
Baseball, there's less contact because they're standing far apart from each other. Right. Basketball's the worst. It's the most difficult sport. And so there's only so much that they can do. I still think, like I said, I think they're going to try to play the season because college basketball is just such a big moneymaker, and clearly the NBA is pushing hard to have it happen. I, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical expert. I don't know exactly what's going to happen with this virus. Even they don't. Nobody does. So there's not any solutions there. But basketball, as much as I think the season's going to happen, it's the scariest of the main sports in terms of just containing the virus, I think.
Yeah. Baseball seems like the perfect social distancing sport. I mean, one person's up to bat. Home plate is a little crowded with 3 people there, but other than that, everybody's
stuff.
Yeah, with everybody, they got face masks. They're good. Yeah.
Yeah, baseball. If they hadn't just had all these labor issues, they'd have been started a while ago, and I think they'd be okay. People would still get it. It's not gonna go away forever, and I think a lot of people, it's hard to realize of like the dugout is not just 25 like super in shape 20-something-year-old dudes. Like there are trainers, there are assistant coaches, there are clubbies. And so there's some risk associated with some of those people and whether you quarantine them or not. And those are things that baseball needs to iron down and figure out. You can't just say, well, we have 2 trainers and one of them's 75 and the other one's 32, so we're just going to can the old guy. Like they can't do stuff like that. They're going to have to figure out ways to be safe enough in situations where there are people who this might be difficult for them. But at the end of the day, it's still easier just as a sport aesthetically to get it done than basketball.
Yeah, because I've heard some takes that, and obviously we're big sports fans and we want to see sports come back, but takes that people saying things like, they shouldn't be doing this because it's setting a bad example of, we're requiring everybody else to social distance, but because this is such a money grab and this makes so much money that is that setting a bad example that you're seeing 50 people in a arena for, an NBA game, or you're seeing 100 people in a MLB stadium doing that. But I mean, at some point, I think we gotta have kind of trial and error and figure out how to manage this. We're not going to be shut down forever and living in our pods forever, hopefully. And so, hopefully they're listening. The leaders are listening to the science, listening to the good stuff. But do you see any, we obviously saw like the XFL that was wiped out by this. I mean, I don't know how well they were doing before this happened, but it seemed like their second attempt here had some traction. But do you see any other organizations? I mean, obviously you're not going to have the NFL shut down. I think they're doing okay. But do you see things like, soccer or other sports being affected to the point where they would have to close shop?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, yeah, clearly NFL, MLB, NBA are going to be fine. MLS is going to be fine, I think. That would be pretty surprising if they were taken down from this. And NHL, I think, will be okay too. So the big ones will be like some of the second tier stuff. Obviously, minor league baseball, we already talked about that at length, but it's kind of given the MLB an excuse to cut some ties there, which is unfortunate. Independent league baseball, which isn't as popular around here, but there's a lot of independent leagues in the East Coast and then the Midwest. And I think that most of them have already shut their season down. And I can't imagine that they have like huge lumps of money just waiting around to sit out an entire year. So that could be tricky for them. And then, there's like the NS and WSL, which I know they just got started again, the Women's Professional Soccer League. And so they got started again. So that's a good sign. But any women's sports, they just don't have as much overhead as the men's sports do. So WNBA, I know they're planning to come back and they're doing their thing. And that's good. I think that they'll probably survive because they have some money from the NBA too. But I would be worried about some of those women's professional sports leagues, and then also just some of the lesser tier leagues. The XFL, they definitely did have the money to finish out that year, but I don't know how much more they had than that. They had some issues up at the top with Vince McMahon and Oliver Luck and some fighting that was going on there already. Yeah. So I think things were going to get ugly in the XFL, but I do think that they probably, if they finished out the season, if their ratings bumped up in the playoffs, which is what they were expecting, they probably would have had enough to get through at least one more year. So this is a bummer for them. I liked watching the XFL. It was fun. It was unique. It was still kind of gimmicky, but I think they had to be a little bit gimmicky because if they just tried to just play an inferior version of regular football, people wouldn't want to watch it. So it's guys who aren't as good, but they're doing different things. And some of these guys are good. And so it worked. I thought it was interesting. I still think that for any semi-professional football league or professional football league, it's not the NFL, I guess. for them to sustain, they have to have some kind of relationship with the NFL. It's the only way it's going to work. Is like what the G League has. They have an actual partnership with the NBA, and obviously the minor leagues for baseball exist for that reason. And until the NFL is willing to allow that to happen, I just don't think that a spring football league is going to. It's not going to be sustainable long term. I think there's a ton of benefits for the NFL to do this, and I don't know why they haven't been like. You can let teams stash guys, and they can. You don't lose talent to European leagues or other spots. And they are starting to expand the practice squads, which is, I think, a good start. Expanding the practice, they went from 10 this year to 12 this year. And then I think it's supposed to be 14 next year. And now they're talking about it being 14 or even 16 this year because of the coronavirus and the possibility of guys missing more time. So part of that actually hurts the XFL because more guys are employed by the NFL. But at the end of the day, if you start to have 20-man taxi squads, at some point they should be like, well, why don't we just put these guys on a team and form a league out of it? And then it's like, oh, well, that's what the XFL could be. Yeah. So we'll see if they ever get there.
There was something just magically awkward about a field goal kicker missing like a 30-yard field goal and walking off to the sideline and instantly being interviewed by a reporter saying, hey, what happened there?
I don't mind media access to players, but that seemed odd. That was a bit much.
I was dying laughing. I was like, oh, this poor bastard just can't catch a break. He missed a 30-yard field goal. All your teammates are giving you hell. The fans hell, and now you have to go answer a public,
it's like in the broadcast, like it's not only on TV, but like sometimes you can hear it in the stadium. So like all the fans who are there are like hearing your response. It was weird. Again, I like the XFL tried stuff. That was maybe not my favorite, but you know what? You got to give it a go, right?
Yeah, there's maybe some of that stuff, but I'll tell you what, some of the stuff that I like the best, and I think they need to implement, especially I think this would be a perfect season to do it with the shortened MLB season, is mic players up and have those players. They did it in the All-Star game where they had guys chasing down foul balls while they're talking to the guys up in the broadcast booth. And, I know you're a baseball guy, I'm a baseball guy, and so we can just sit there and enjoy a beer and a baseball game and we're all about it. But for the outsider crowd that thinks baseball games are too long, they're not as entertaining, there's not as much action, a lot of sitting around, I think that's a good way at least to get people to start watching baseball on TV. Because my wife's not a huge baseball fan, but she likes going to the games and the experience. But if we're sitting down and watching a game on TV, yeah, she's not going to sit there and watch a full 3-hour Mariners game unless something is magical going on and there's a perfect game rolling. But if you got guys that are funny, that are entertaining, because they are, you just don't see it enough. I would pay money to hear Nelson Cruz or Adrian Beltre or anybody mic those guys up all day long, and I could watch that forever.
Yeah, baseball is an interesting one because it's definitely a sport better enjoyed in person, like more so than I think NFL, more so than the NBA, than just those sports in general. Because it's that aesthetic of like going to a game, having a beer, having a hot dog, walking around the stadium. And it's just kind of more ingrained in culture in a way of like how to go to a baseball game. So baseball has focused so much on that they haven't focused on like, how do we make the game entertaining from a broadcast perspective? And like they're just really behind. The NBA, the NFL, they've made some adjustments. They've figured it out. They still have work that they could do, but they have more in-game interviews with players and coaches sometimes, at least in the NBA. They have guys mic'd up periodically, which sometimes goes poorly, but sometimes is at least an attempt that they're doing. They'll have mics in the huddle and stuff like that. And the baseball is just like, no, our sport's better in person, so we're just not going to do any of that. And so then you have this massive marketing issue where nobody knows who Mike Trout is, even though he's the best baseball player potentially of all time. And Trout's an interesting example because he's really just a boring person. So miking him up would probably not be super interesting. But you have your Christian Yelich's and your Mookie Betts and your Cody Bellinger. And like you said, Adrian Beltre and Francisco Lindor on the Indians, guys who are really charismatic and really interesting and really funny and are willing to do it. And you're just not engaging that part of the fan base. And like, yeah, they're afraid of like the, older people who are like, oh, that's not how it used to be, and I don't like that. And it's like, you have to focus on getting younger people into your game. Like those people aren't going to be around forever. And if you let them dictate your game, it's just never going to change forever. And that's the problem. Yeah. And so I absolutely agree. I would love to see them do more of that stuff. I think this is the right season to do it. I don't think baseball needs a ton of rule changes. They're adding a few this year. I don't mind them, but baseball just needs like an injection of energy. and your players are willing to do it, you're just not pulling the trigger on actually getting it done. And I hope that they change that soon.
You make a good point about like obviously Trout being one of the best baseball players of all time, currently of his generation,
Sure.
but just not being like super interesting. I learned that, I think Tiger Woods is a pretty, he can be charismatic and have funny lines, but I watched some of the Phil Mickelson, Peyton Manning, Tiger and Tom Brady.
Yeah.
And you're just trying to listen and Tiger's just locked in, and he's just not because he doesn't care. He's like, yeah, I'm golfing. This is what I'm doing. And Phil's out there having a great time, and he's running around with golf carts. And but yeah, you look like a really great golfer. But yeah, it just didn't translate really well to that. But that was entertaining. As I would do that for golf as well, man. Give me Phil Mickelson mic'd up all day. I'll listen to that forever.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. Russell Wilson is a similar example. They had him mic'd up in a game once. The dude is. People think that Russell Wilson is fake. I'll tell you right now, he's not. He's very. The robotic personality that you see is just real. He's like so dialed in. He has like a mental health coach, and he puts all of his energy into what he wants to do on the football field. Clearly, it works. He's extraordinarily talented, but it's almost at the expense of like his conversations with media are very bland. He talks a lot, but it's just he doesn't really say anything, and it's like he's not like shielding anything else. He's just
yeah. That's like, I'm not that worried about entertaining you. I want to get back to working out or get back to whatever I'm doing to get better at football.
Exactly. And the game he was mic'd up, he was saying stuff like "good game, guys" and like "nice job," and everybody was like, it has to be because he's mic'd up. I'm like, it's not. That's really what he's like. He's just so like relentlessly positive and like PG rated, and he's just a goofy dude. But yeah, there's I think a lot of like the elites in sports are like that. Russell Wilson, Mike Trout, obviously Tiger Woods, like they are just so locked in on what they do. Obviously, you have counterexamples. If you watch The Last Dance and Michael Jordan, he's certainly more of a character. LeBron is not somebody to shy away from being controversial and talking a lot either. But a lot. I mean, even Steph's pretty kind of just locked in. Some of those guys are just like that. It's interesting.
Yeah, The Last Dance. That was being a kid that grew up. I have a Dennis Rodman jersey that my mom bought me when I must have been 4 or 5 years old when he was on the Bulls, and we had no affiliation with Chicago Bulls, with NBA basketball. It was like that's how big that was. That my mom, who wasn't a big basketball fan, went out and bought this Rodman jersey for me in Spokane, Washington, because this was what everybody was doing. So it was cool to watch that and appreciate it, because I don't think I appreciated it obviously as a 5, 6, 7 up to 10-year-old when they kind of wrapped up. But that was cool to go back and watch and watch some of the history of it, because I didn't know a lot of the story. Like the Rodman and Vegas thing was, I had no idea about that. That was great. Like a dude, just imagine that today. You just imagine like somebody of that caliber that was that important to a team that would just like walk off. So
I think the comparison I saw was like, imagine Steph Curry having to chase down Draymond Green in Las Vegas. Like, would he do that? Like, would he have to, and Michael was just like, yeah, we need Dennis. I'm going to go get him. Like, that's just what's going to happen. So goofy.
Oh man, that was great. And then I just recently watched I don't know if you got a chance to watch the Griffey documentary.
I haven't yet. No, it's high on my list, but
it's good. It's worth it. Yeah, for somebody that is obviously a Mariners fan and a Northwest kid, watching that and watching guys like Macklemore and just listening to the old Dave Niehaus call. Yeah. My wife was telling me like we've got the technology now with, if you have somebody, I know they're saying that if you had somebody who does a podcast today and speaks X amount of words, you can actually recreate their voice to say anything you want because they've said every syllable. How do we figure out to do that with Dave Niehaus so that we can listen to live calls with Dave Niehaus and somebody can plug in the material? But I said the problem you're going to have is no one just had that. I don't know if it was just attitude or willingness to say, break out the rye bread and mustard, grandma. Like who thinks of things like that to say for a call?
Yeah.
But he was a great one.
I mean, I would, if we could figure out that technology, I'd still listen to games that way for sure. But yeah, it was his live reaction to stuff was incredible. He was elite, and that documentary is definitely on my list. Obviously, like I said, I probably didn't really get into like Major League Baseball as a sport until like 99, 2000. So kind of right around when Griffey left. Like I remember having an emotional reaction to Griffey leaving the Mariners. So clearly I was a fan of them before that, but like the 01 season when they won 116 games was the first time that I really followed them on like a day-to-day basis. I was reading the newspaper. I remember that. But Griffey was an all-timer, and any opportunity I have to learn more about his time with the Mariners, I want to soak it in, and it sounds like this is well worth it.
It's great. Definitely worth it. It's a cool thing to watch on. We watched it on Father's Day too with my father-in-law, and it was a cool thing to watch. But yeah, it was I think that 01 season with the Mariners, that was the first time I started watching baseball regularly and following every day, because it was like, are they going to keep doing this? Are they going to keep doing this? And so hopefully they can get – I just need the Mariners to be relevant. I just need them to be – I know they're working and they're getting the farm system going, but I had a funny photo. I don't know if it was last year, maybe it was the year before, but I told everybody, I'm like, all right, I'm not going to get invested into the Mariners. Not going to spend. There was a down year. We had just lost. I don't know who was gone, but it's like, okay, I'm not going to do this. And then 14 days into the season, I took a photo outside of Safeco because the Mariners had some crazy run of being like 12-2. And I'm like, all right, this is me promising not to be emotionally invested in this team, but back. So and then they ended up finishing, 25 games out of the AL West. So
yeah.
I need them to be relevant. You're going to see a grown man cry tears when Gonzaga wins a national championship, and then the Mariners. I get to go to a Mariners playoff game in whatever field. I don't care. It doesn't have to be T-Mobile. I'll go anywhere to
I really think both those things are happening in the next couple of years. I feel pretty good about the Mariners. Like the Mariners are a ways away from being World Series winners. It's really, really hard to build a good enough team to do that. But they're not far away from being playoff teams. Their farm system is really, really good, and I know that. For more casual Mariners fans who might be listening to this, like it's easy to see them having given up with Cano and Cruz and letting a lot of those guys go. But in the past, they've never done a good enough job of actually just committing to building a minor league system, and they really have now. They're really good. And obviously not all minor leaguers pan out. Clearly, it's not just like, oh, every one of these guys is going to be an all-star. But it's a lot better chance than there used to be. And I think they have a few like generational guys, like guys who could be like really, really good. And if what they need to do is flip the switch at the right time and say, okay, these guys are ready. Let's go buy the rest of the talent that we need. You can't, like everybody talks about the Astros, like, oh, they grew themselves a great team. Sure, but they spent money on Justin Verlander. They spent a lot of money on Garrett Cole. They traded for Zach Greinke. Like they did what I think teams need to do, which is develop a bunch of hitting, hope that most of your hitters pan out, and then buy a bunch of pitching, because developing pitchers is really freaking hard. So
one of those weird ones where, like, to build a real national, contender, it seems like it takes forever. It's years. It's not like you could put together. You can see in the NBA, you see it all the time. You see a couple trades happen, and you see, bam, you got the super team that is ready to compete for an NBA championship. With baseball, you're not making enough moves, and you're not building enough of your farm system up to have we went from 40 games out of the first place last year to now we're a World Series contender. It just doesn't happen that quick. So that one seems like much more of an art that I guess the movie Moneyball really got me into, of like, what does it take to really build a team? Because I didn't know enough about that. And you talk about cheap owners and cheap franchises. There you go. There's a great example of it. But Moneyball is definitely all right. Now we got to play the top 5 sports movies game.
All right.
Oh, you're ready for this. We did not prepare this, so I'm not prepared, but I know you got to.
I'm thinking now frantically. Let's see. Bull Durham is probably my favorite baseball movie. Or definitely baseball movie, maybe sports movie. What came out late 80s, Kevin Costner, who did like every good sports movie, or some bad sports movies too.
Yeah.
But I love Bull Durham. I love Remember the Titans because it's an absolute classic, obviously. Moneyball would probably be on there. I think I haven't seen it as many times as those other movies, certainly, so I probably need to rewatch it. Maybe that'll be the evening plan. We'll see. But those are 3 right there, and then there's probably like 10 other ones that I could pick from.
Being a high school football coach, Friday Night Lights was a big one.
Yeah,
that was a good one. But I really liked the movie. Oh gosh, what is it? It's about the Texas high school. It was like the first African American. Glory Road.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Basketball movies are tough. I don't know why there's no like Hoosiers is the classic one. Hoosiers is fine. I don't think it would make my top 5. It's okay. Glory Road's good. Coach Carter's good.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's great, but it's good. I don't know why basketball movies just don't track as well, or I'm not as interested in them. I love basketball, so I'm not sure why they.
Yeah.
It's usually baseball or football movies for me. The Rookie is a good one. It's pretty cheesy, but I still like it. Major League is a classic as well. Hard to beat that. It's very different from the other ones, but it's still good.
Oh, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where does Rudy land for you?
Yeah. I don't know. The top 10 probably, but sports movies, it's mostly because sports movies are not very good. It's hard to make good sports movies. Rudy's fine. It's just cheesy.
Right.
But it's okay. I like Sean Astin, so I don't hate Rudy. But when some people are like, I really dislike Rudy, I'm like, yeah, I get it. Like, I understand why people, or Field of Dreams, people are like, Field of Dreams is terrible. And I'm like, yeah, it kind of is. Like, I like it, but it is bad. Like,
all over the place and pretty, like, you're trying to, and that's one for me. Like, just the last scene is just so emotional that you're like, yeah, you can't help but like it. But the whole plot is just so hard to follow. Field of Dreams that.
I listened to a podcast, Effectively Wild podcast, which is just three baseball people, and they had a whole episode about Field of Dreams. And they're basically like, this movie's a freaking mess, but both of them at the end were like, yeah, we like it. Like, you still conclude that it's okay, it's fine, but it's not really good. Like, if it didn't have a sentimentality, I think it would just be straight up bad. But they hook you at the end.
You replace James Earl Jones with anybody else in that role too, and you're in trouble as well. So that he saved a lot of that too.
Yeah. Sandlot is also kind of in a similar vein. I would have Sandlot probably on my list, but it's also like more of a sentimental movie than an actual good movie. But, I'll still watch the hell out of it. So,
yeah. Well, that's a pretty good list right there. I don't know what we're missing, but any good Bob? I mean, you got obviously like your Rocky franchise, which is just comical.
Yeah.
That's why Remember the Titans for me is one, like, it has a couple cheesy moments in it, but that holds up, and I would still watch that today and be absolutely entertained by it. Whereas I go back and you watch like Rocky and you're like, oh God, like watching his neck
exactly
around before he gets hit.
Yeah.
But they did a pretty good job with the Creed franchise, bringing that back. I haven't seen any of those yet, but I've heard good things about them.
First Creed is good. I either I haven't watched the second one or I don't remember it, so maybe it's not good. But the first one is definitely good. I remember liking that one. Yeah. Well, then there's like $1 Million Baby, which is a sports movie, I guess, but it's kind of based more on everything else that's going on. But that's a really good movie too. Yeah. It kind of depends on where you draw the line on sports movies. Some people consider any movie that has like any semblance of sports in it becomes a sports movie, and then it's like a way broader grouut of movies that you could consider there. But
Here Comes the Boom with
it's like Gridiron Gang. That one's bad, but there's a lot of them out there.
Longest Yard. Yeah.
There you go.
Longest Yard's cheesy, but it's funny. I get a good laugh. I think Adam Sandler gets a bad rap. I just watched his Uncut Gems. That was pretty dark, but decent movie. But.
Yeah, I like Uncut Gems. See, that's another one that, would you consider that a sports movie? Like Kevin Garnett's in it. There's basketball.
Right. Yeah.
It's not centrally around sports. It's around him, but he's a gambler. So I don't know. Right. It's probably not a sports movie, but it is a good movie.
Yeah.
Or Happy Gilmore, if you want to talk about like loose sports movies.
Gilmore's one of the good. Yeah, Happy Gilmore's a good one. Waterboy. I mean, he does a lot.
That's right. Waterboy. Yeah, I guess a lot of his movies do involve sports.
Yeah, I mean, even like he's done a football movie, a basketball movie. If you count, what's the one where they're all grown-ups?
Yeah, grown-ups. Yeah.
Basketball movie. I mean, they play basketball at the end. I guess it's just like
that's a basketball movie. I mean, he's not in Benchwarmers, but Benchwarmers is a lot of the same guys, and that's a baseball movie. So
he's done football, basketball, baseball, golf.
Yeah.
We need a NASCAR movie from
He'll probably do it.
I don't know if you can read. I mean, you can't make a comedy like Talladega Nights. I'm not a Will Ferrell. I'm a huge Will Ferrell fan, but some of his newer stuff I'm not a huge fan of. But Talladega Nights has enough laughs in it that you just can't.
Yeah, I don't think you can do another NASCAR comedy in that genre. I think it kind of just took the cake there.
Like, how do you remake that? Because it's just going to be a knockoff of Talladega Nights. You don't get any more obnoxious than Will Ferrell running around in his underwear on top of Daytona.
I read somewhere, and I don't know if this is true, but I read that when they pitched that movie, that the entire pitch to the producer was Will Ferrell as a NASCAR driver. That was 6-word pitch. And at that point, like, they just come off Anchorman and everything. So they were like, sure, whatever you want to do. Like, that sounds great. And then part of the reason they did Step Brothers was because after filming Talladega Nights, it was such a nightmare to film because they were constantly in the suits and they were hot as hell and they hated it. So like, all right, if we're gonna do another movie, we just got to be like grown babies or something. Like, we want to just not have to do anything complicated. And they were like, all right, here's a script for you. Like, great, cool.
You guys in Hollywood that probably just have that, like, Will Ferrell could probably do anything he wants and it's gonna make money. Like,
Yeah,
The Rock and Kevin Hart are gonna do anything they wanted. Luckily, they choose to do pretty decent stuff, but
yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, hey, man, thanks for I guess we'll end on Will Ferrell.
Sure.
Today, but yeah, we'll have to do this again. We'll get you on again. If fans of college basketball, athletics, make sure you guys check out the Score Zag Score podcast. You also have Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter page for all
of them are called Score Zag Score. Easy enough to find. So just search there, you'll be able to find it.
Yeah, check that out. And then where can people follow you for any other content?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Andy Patton SEA. A lot of Seahawks stuff, a lot of baseball stuff. So give me a follow, and hopefully we can chat.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks so much, Andy. Hopefully we get back to some normalcy and get some college athletics, and go Zags, go Hawks, go Mariners, go sports right now. We need a sports season to pick us out of this. So
go sports, but mostly go Zags. Thanks for having me on, Cory. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Thanks, Andy.
Yep.